we have, shit, I really don't know how to. Okay, so there's you, me, Vera. Stephanie, hello. How's Arizona? Are you in Arizona or Spain?
No, here I am in Barcelona. I am in Barcelona. Hi, everyone. It's nice to see you. I'm happy to be here again from following up from the RightsCon session.
Yeah. So, but it seems like this is interesting because it seems like there's a lot of people that weren't on the RightsCon call. This is sort of a continuation of what we started there. So we were gonna, on this sort of agenda that I sent out, it was to run over really quickly what we did in RightsCon, which was basically the idea is that there are all these people with rivers they want to protect, and people have a really hard time accessing scientific arguments because collecting data takes a long time, and it takes expertise, and it takes equipment that people don't have access to. So the initial idea was from a human rights angle, but that if people have access to collecting their own data, then they will be much more empowered. So we did this presentation at the RightsCon conference, thanks to Zamira. And basically there were 5 of us. So Zamira presented as a human rights lawyer, then I presented as like the person with the problem with the hydropowers on our head. And then Vera talked about river intellectuals and what they've tried to put together. And then Jess talked about specific technologies, low-cost technologies that are being developed that she's working on to allow people to collect their own data. And then Flaviano from Source International talked about his experience in South America collecting data, making low-cost technology available to people, and then what you can do with the data when you have it. So in short, that was like how this conversation started. But because we only had an hour, we didn't have a lot of time to meet each other. So, and I talked a lot. So, so we were hoping to start with introductions, like who's in the room right now, because we're really excited. We see this as a long-term project. And we're really looking to like create a group of people who are excited to work on it that will grow. But I think at 8 o'clock on a Monday, we're really seeing who's really a bit hardcore. So anyway, so like that was the idea. It was like we can go around and say who we are. Do y'all know who I am? That sounds really arrogant. So my name is Cahterine. I live in northern Albania, in this really beautiful river. It's got 14 hydropowers being dumped on its head, and we have a small NGO, and we've been trying for 5 years to stop them. We haven't succeeded yet because of the corruption of the Albanian justice system and government, but we're convinced that we'll win in the end. And when we first started fighting, because we were in a hurry trying to stop construction, we didn't think we had time for scientific arguments. Now, we didn't succeed in stopping the construction of the first 3 hydropowers. So now we're looking at like combating operation, which means actually a much longer term fight. And we have time to get data. So we need to. But we can't afford anything and we don't know how to do it. That's who we are. Maybe, Zamira, do you want to do next? Because this is all your brainchild.
Well, I wouldn't take the credit for that, but I was gonna say, just like Viridon, like I'm also here because of Cahterine. But hi everyone, I'm a human rights lawyer, and this conversation, from my perspective, is, you know, the sort of the intersection between the human rights of the people who are trying to protect the environment that they live in, and sort of the ability to do so. And we have been in touch with, I used to work for American Bar Association Center for Human Rights. I continue cooperating with them, but now I work independently and I'm based in Belgrade. so we've been in touch with Cahterine for a while. The first project was to document the type of harassment that people are facing as a result of trying to protest this hydropower in Valbona. So that's how I came into this. I don't like what's happening and our cooperation with TOKA. My interest to continue working in this is to see if I can be of any support in trying to support the people who are trying to protect the environment. So I'm not a scientist, but I do see there's a big value in people's ability to document what's happening. I don't know who wants to go next. But...
Hello, I can go next. I'm Flaviano. I'm the founder and the director of Source International, which is an NGO that provides scientific evidences to community who are affected by harmful consequences of companies. Mostly we work with mining companies, but also oil extraction companies and dam in this case. And we basically work on two different levels. From one level, we collect high profile scientific evidences that community can use for their advocacy, lobby, or for their legal actions. And from the other side, we also train local community to do their own environmentally, their own community-based monitoring system. That's it.
Yeah, cool. I can take over and we'll have other people that were at the conference. Hi, I'm Vera. I'm from the Netherlands, but working a lot on rivers in the Balkans since a few years. And last year we organized with the River Collective, of which two other people are here, a summer school in Slovenia to get together students from different disciplines to really look at this like threat of hydropower dams being built in the Balkans from many different disciplines. Also, I know Cahterine from Valbona Valley where I visited, and I'm really quite enthusiastic to make science available for the people there to actually fight their fight in that sense, and also to kind of make them the scientists in the sense, right? So that it's not only scientists coming in and really like telling what should be happening there, but that they can like prove whatever they feel needs to be told. Story. So quite excited to see if we can pull this up and actually start monitoring next year in Valbona Valley, where we'll also be organizing the students for Rivers Camp. So we'll have a moment where we get people together at least in the valley, including quite some scientists and from different disciplines. So I hope that would be a cool moment to get this project going. And maybe I can turn over to Jess and then Ellie, who are both part of the River Collective team also, to introduce themselves.
Yeah, I was also in the conference with Vera and Flaviano and Cahterine. And as Cahterine said earlier, I'm a scientist working on creating open source hardware for citizen science monitoring tools. So specifically, I'm working on a turbidity sensor, which monitors, which is can be used to monitor sediments in the river.
Hey guys, I wasn't part of the conference, but I'm excited to be part of this conversation now. I'm Ellie, and I am just working with the River Collective and helping to organize the Students for Rivers Camp, which should have happened this year in Montenegro. Now we have to do it online. Next year we're coming to the Valbona Valley. That's about it. Not a scientist yet. We'll see.
Okay, Kate. Oh, sorry. Can you hear me? There's actually some really interesting people in the room as well. Maybe Stephanie, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, so my name is Stephanie Gobea. I'm originally from Tucson, Arizona. I studied at the University of Arizona. I started with political science, studying foreign affairs, and then I went on and got a Bachelor of Science in Environmental and Water Resource Economics. And that was due to like my interest with sort of the way water was being utilized, like as like the only example I can go to is Israel and Palestine, how they use water against the Palestinians. And so like I thought like the exploitation of resources is like incredibly awful coming from the desert, like in Arizona. As someone who's like put water for migrants out, it's like water is very important. So that's kind of like where I started with water. Then I had a graduate degree, which I just finished in December in human rights practice. And so like my focus has been in immigration, migration, because I come from like a border town, there's certain policies there. And I guess a lot of also like on the Indian reservation and what's happening with resources there. So I'm not a scientist. I think I'm more of like a academic researcher, scholar, and I'm really into reading policy, probably identify more there with Zamira. But I did study economics, and I think the conversation we had at RightsCon was really intriguing for me, specifically because I saw that you guys were kind of like trying to combine different disciplines to come through this sort of conversation of, you mentioned, Cahterine, like in a short nutshell, all these people with rivers that they want to protect, like you guys are all these people. And like we don't have open data because data is so expensive to gather. And so like the only way we can really bring about a value for water is if like there's a movement going on. And I think right now in the moment in history with what is happening with the world as far as climate and also just COVID, where we are today, I think we're like in a window of opportunity. So I'm interested to see what I can be of help with. I'm now living in Barcelona. I should be getting my residency permit soon, and yeah, in a new country and ready to meet like-minded people and to see how I can put my skills to use with you all.
Sweet.
Thank you.
So maybe jump to Iris then, because that was an interesting. Hey. If we can.
You have to unmute yourself.
Oopa.
Yeah, I'm from the mobile, so it's a bit difficult. Yeah, can you hear now?
Mm-hmm. Now we got you.
Yeah, I have some internet connections problems. I don't know why, but yes, I'm doing it from the mobile, and we'll see how it works. So my name is Iris. I'm from Israel. I'm here because of Cahterine. Actually, it's funny because we became friends, and then we also work in kind of same fields. I'm working for the Society for Protection of Nature in Israel, and conducting the public involvement and awareness in the field of rivers. Actually, here it's more streams than rivers. We have only one river, but lots of streams. Some of them flow.
Is it only me not understanding anything?
Really hard to understand.
Yeah, it's
Some
here.
of them
The connection is
winter,
really bad.
and some of them are dry. In the desert,
It was
mainly.
quite alright at the beginning, but it's really.
And
I don't know how to get to the chat.
actually, as a guest here, very interested to hear, because as I oh, I'm sorry. I had such a speech. I don't know what's going on in here tonight.
Maybe you turn the camera off, because that takes a lot of your data.
I don't know what's going on. I don't know. I'll take a few minutes and I'll try to work it out.
Sounds a lot better now. I must
Can you hear?
But I think we got the main point.
I'll try. Can you hear now?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's better.
I was okay. So
yeah,
I was just saying. I've joined the meeting as a friend, as a guest, as Catherine's friend, but I'm working in the Society for Protection of Nature in Israel in a similar field, conducting the public involvement and awareness in the rivers and streams field in Israel. It's a new field that we're into now. It's been only a few months that we deal with it because the situation, I don't know how much you know, but it is very bad. Some of them flow throughout the year. We have also dry rivers or streams, and some of them we use a lot of purified sewage water flowing through them. So there's a lot to do. So I'm here to listen, to study, maybe to contribute from my experience. But yeah, it's very exciting.
But what a great chance to bring Israeli students over, Vera, for summer camp. And then I'm super excited actually that Albi is here, because Zamira, you'll be happy. Albi can introduce himself, but I'm really excited you're here.
Can you hear me all? Okay.
Yep.
So my name is Albi. I am from Albania, Shkodër, the north. I'm a lawyer by training, so I graduated in 2018. So I hold a Bachelor of Law degree and also a Master's degree in International Law, with concentration in International Human Rights Law. I'm currently doing an LLM at Arizona State University, Center the O'Connor College of Law, which is in DC, because Arizona State has also a campus in DC. I know it sounds weird. So I'm currently based in DC. So I guess I can help in terms of human rights issues, advocacy.
Okay. I'm going to jump in now because the reason that I just started to know Albi is he started something called Rule of Law Albania, and he writes the most blistering essays about what the government is doing and how illegal it is, and he like pinpoints and quotes like the specific things of law. So in terms of like really knowing Albanian law and what it encompasses, I think, sorry Albi, nice to actually see you for the first time, but I think he's like an incredible resource. Zamira, you're gonna like him. Because so one of our big questions is like we can do all this great stuff to collect data, but if we don't know what the law is and we don't know where we're actually going to fight and use the data.
Actually, I think I heard that Zamira has worked with the ABA. There was a report in 2019, I think, about Valbona River.
Yes.
Did you write it? Because I think I heard your name somewhere. That's why.
I did not write it, but I took part in writing it.
Okay.
It was her baby. It was her baby. She made it happen. Sorry. Okay. Is there anybody else that didn't introduce themselves yet?
Yeah. So I have been on video because I have my 2 young kids here with me. So I've been making granola with them. But Natalie, I have a PhD in Fluvial Geomorphology, which is the study of rivers or river science from a kind of earth science perspective. So thinking about how rivers, why they look the way they do and how they change. So I have a lot of experience with field data collection, but also I've done a lot of work coming up with writing a lot of science from pretty simple data. And I'd say a good thing about this is that some of the most expensive, I think, parts of data collection is actually acquiring the data or the man hours. So you either put in an expensive equipment where you don't have someone there to collect it, or you have volunteers or people collecting, but that, you know, or you paying someone to go somewhere or doing a big field excursion. So the most expensive part, I think, of all of this data collection is actually in the collection itself, which it's cool to hear the human rights and all the things. If you get people involved, that's where it's exciting, because you can really lower the cost and accessibility. Yeah, so that's what, I guess, a little bit background. I went on the Marignan and how I got involved with this group. I went on the Marignan back in 2015 as doing like a science rapid collection to try to get some data on that river for the hydropower.
Which is in South America, right?
In South America. And that sort of spawned a lot of discussions and thought about how to get data from adventure scientists and different things that could be useful for the lid. Yeah. I'll give you some more.
So nice.
I'll give you some more nuts to do. There you go.
Real life. Yay.
And so that sort of got me thinking a lot about on this subject, and I've put a lot of thought into what can be collected and how that can be collected cheaply. And then I met, let's see, Jessica I do a lot of paddling too. I'm a kayaker, professional kayaker as well, and I met Jessica on a trip, and at the time I was writing a grant to go back to the Marignan to do more, and we got chatted about this stuff, so it's neat to see how it's kind of spread out from there, and the network is growing. Right now I'm working with the Marignan waterkeepers, Luigi and Ben, on putting together a simple protocol where they can start doing stuff. And I'd been working a lot thought-wise and conceptually on a concept I had originally called RAW, or Rapid Assessment of Rivers at Risk, which would put together protocols and tools for people to do river monitoring beyond just like, let's see what I think most of the citizen science, like obvious stuff online, is pretty much get your river monitors out there and monitor for quality. Here's your pH kit with your, I don't know, to find out some of the chemistry, but there's not a lot of help out there for people wanting to monitor for other sorts of physical changes in the river and impacts beyond the water quality, which is sort of like the obvious dumping of chemicals. So yeah, so I've gotten a good start on that. I am limited a little bit. Right now I don't have a job, but I now have an 8-month-old and a 3.5, so I've been doing a lot of mom kind of stuff and filling in as I can with
granola,
pet projects, these sort of things that helping out, kind of trying to keep these ideas going and progressing as I can. So that's who I am and where I'm at. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Thanks. Well, okay, so now I just want to jump in and say that what I'm really excited about, and I know it's 8 o'clock on a Monday and we're all tired. I'm having a beer. I don't know. But what I'm really excited about is that I know, as much as I love Valbona River, like saving one river isn't enough, right? And what I've seen, even just within Albania, is that rivers end up competing with each other. People are like, no, save my river. No, save my river. No. And then they're like these heartbreaking rural communities who have no access to donor funds or fancy shit, or don't even speak English, so they're never going to get any attention. Like, basically, like, we have to save all the rivers, right? So I am really excited about this group. I think I'm so happy you're all here, because I think we could start and really try to develop these methodologies which could be shared and then empower all the rivers, and then all the rivers can get saved, right? So, and for that, I think the next thing that we wanted to talk about was the fact that we could all crawl onto Zoom once every couple of weeks and talk about this stuff, but we actually do have this thing coming up in Valbona next year, which is the Students for Rivers Camp, which is a really great opportunity to actually start this. And also we have sort of there should be a project coming up next year where all this will get funded. And so I was really happy because a lot of the people in this room were like, let's make Valbona a test case and we'll test all this shit out, but then we'll export it, right? Because we have to help all the other rivers. So the thing I think now that's really great to talk about, while we have all these amazing people here who are excited from all over the place, is if Vera could talk a little bit about what's going to happen next summer and why it's so cool and why it will not just be for us, but it'll be for like all the rivers. Yeah.
Right. High expectations.
You know,
no, but I'm excited for the same reason for sure. We'll save the world. It's easy. If we're all on board, right? That's the idea. No, but fact is that there's just many rivers around the world, even like definitely in the Balkans, but everywhere, that face similar problems. But all the fights are being fought quite locally, and I think indeed the communities don't even realize kind of the same problems they have are happening everywhere. And that's kind of one of the messages we want to give along with the Students for Rivers Camp. Which is really gathering of local students as well as students from different countries to kind of get that international group together, so that you can like see that other people care about the rivers in the same way and face similar problems, and then come together and really chat about it and kind of find similarities, but also start thinking about solutions. And yeah, this year we would have been in Montenegro, but like we're also a pretty young organization. That's to start. Like we started 1 year ago, pretty much, the Students for Rivers Camp in Slovenia. But just it's been picking up because people really feel this synergy. They feel the value of a river, and they want to kind of prove that this value is really there, and that it's maybe a higher value to have a free-flowing river than hydropower. Doubtful. I kind of agree on it, and I think most people do. So I think indeed, like it's a group of students that all are passionate about rivers and that like want to do something, but they don't really know what and how they can start. And I think this having a project in Valbona Valley in a moment people can meet, like just putting a date on it and a space and a place, like really gets people to start doing stuff instead of being the students that want to learn. And so I feel like if we actually set a date and we start organizing it, I feel like it will trickle and more people will join in. I don't know if this is kind of the story you were hoping for, Cahterine.
Yeah, but also like, be concrete, because like there's 45 students, right?
Right. That's kind of
usually Valbona will be the third river camp,
yes.
and you usually include 45 students. So
sure.
There's like
the first camp we had 30 students, but also like there were 10 or 15 professors and like experts and just people that wanted to join in to give a lecture or something involved. 20 different countries. So like in some way within 1 year we have a huge reach of different people and different disciplines. That's like super important to us also, to not only have the biologist or only have law students but just to have the variety. Because indeed also like it's data collection. You can do the super hard natural sciences, but taking it a step further and also doing the science communication, I think that's super essential. And having the political background, making students aware that their piece of evidence might be useful, and it's super cool that they're collecting it, but it's only useful if communicated well and if done within the right context. So these data that we might be collecting with this group of like community monitoring and stuff, it's only going to be useful if it actually reaches like some policymakers, and if it actually, and I think that's why it's good to have Flaviano here also, because they have this project going on in, for instance, Mongolia, where they really like could prove that pollution was happening, air pollution, and that's only if it's really communicated and like
documented.
feels people kind of understand what's happened, valued, right? So this combination, I think having a group together there will just help.
Cool. So yeah, the takeaway from all of this is that this is actually going to happen next year. We're going to bring these students, and one thing is that Vera and I were talking a lot about how the first summer camp brought together people, students, professors, all this really cool stuff. We're all really enthusiastic. And it was a great achievement to pull it off for the first time. This year, in the face of COVID, River Collective has had to shift it to being online. But next year, we were thinking in the third year to really expand it to where the camp fosters the first. It doesn't just inspire people to do research, but it actually supports that research. So we're trying to write in. We believe we're going to get funding, and we're trying to write in that not only does the camp happen, but we start research projects in the camp, or we inspire them, which start after, and then we support them. So there will be follow-ups to the camp where, you know. And it doesn't matter whether people research on Valbona River or whether they go back to home rivers and do it there, but somehow that this should all grow. And maybe this is a good time for me just to point out that, because it is Monday night and we're all tired, we're not going to fix anything during this conversation, but I think what we really want from this conversation is to feel like we have a group, a really multidisciplinary group who are all excited about this idea. And I know there's like a lot more people that couldn't make it tonight, but that we should make this happen. And funny as it is, as like the spokesperson for Valbona River usually, I really want this to happen everywhere on all the rivers. So I'm gonna shut up now. I don't know if we should focus tonight on talking about
if I can jump in first.
Camp next summer, or I would really like to hear from the other people.
It's Zamira not to.
Yeah. So yeah, I think that this is a great idea to use the next year's camp as a sort of a place where not necessarily to jumpstart, but actually like a milestone towards which we could be doing things now. And I am in fact excited that Albi is here, because we do need lawyers who know Albanian law and policy and requirements. We had that conversation with Carl and Associates about, you know, what are the requirements for it's one thing about fighting hydropower altogether, and then a different thing about fighting for a sort of a small hydropower that is at least minimally harmful, so like quote unquote responsibly operated, right? And those requirements in all of the Balkan countries are actually very wishy-washy and not clear. Like when there is no standard to hold them to, then you know, how can you even, like, collecting the data is only half of the problem, right? So collecting the data, one, for trying to hold them to the standards that are already in the law, but then also trying to document the kind of harm that's existing to be able to push for the laws that would establish those standards, right? So I don't know if it's possible in the lead up to the camp to have some lawyers and law students like give us some of those standards that already exist, and then, you know, we can mobilize some international lawyers to do the like international standards part, and then match it with what the scientists, you guys are doing in terms of like the kind of data that can be collected to push for those things. And maybe I'm thinking very much in kind of a standard way of how these things, you know, like advocacy happens that I have seen. Maybe it won't work in this case, I don't know, but this is sort of the kind of approach that I would suggest.
Here is Flaviano speaking.
Yeah, go.
So as Zamira already mentioned, there is an important part on changing the regulation, but the law change on social pressure and advocacy, as Zamira mentioned. And there is a huge problem here, and I've seen this in my experience, for example, in Latin America with wind power. The point that hydropower is a green reputation. So we also need to include kind of a strong communication aim to all the impacts of dam and hydropower projects, because otherwise we won't go very far. It's much easier if you attack an oil companies or the damage caused by a mine, because their reputation is already, people know that those are harmful, that those are bad. But when we speak about hydropower, wind power, those renewable energy, I think we always should add some component of communication, and pretty big one. Otherwise, it's going to be hard to like involve the advocacy aspect and then the changing of the law.
Yeah, Flaviano, something good to know is that in the very short response time that we had to start fighting the hydropowers and around the Balkans, that's a kid. They're so good. Okay. In fact, we've done a really good job at giving hydropower a bad name. Like in Albania, nobody likes it anymore, and nobody buys the green thing. So, but I completely agree, because even if you don't have that as a focus, still like a lot of what I see that TOKA does is we do this really great work and then we never tell anybody. So communication is very important. But we're just lucky that I think there's a bunch of people working on hydropower in the Balkans who have started to be pretty successful about giving it a really bad name.
Yeah, no, and in fact, there are a lot of protests and sort of movements that are anti-hydropower that are happening all over the Balkans. But Flaviano's point and yours, Cahterine, is well taken in terms of connecting to those movements to get them to help us, like to sort of, obviously we can't push for the standards and the regulation on our own. So like the idea is to connect to bigger movements that are fighting hydropower.
I have a very, very actual connecting to movements moment. I'm in my van, and these are all kayakers that just came from the river in Utstal. And they've been actually, in a sense, it was a protest, wasn't it? Or it was more gathering all rafters and kayakers, and they're all going to talk about river defense tonight.
Wow.
So I'll have to drink beer. Just showing this, because like I do think we with the student service campaign somehow like people come in from a passion, right? And we've seen this being super strong, and we've really seen people coming and connecting to this movement. Like we do need a movement indeed for it. And I'm, for instance, excited, like Liridon, he's not there, another Liridon, sorry. But he started kayaking last year, right? He came to the Students for Rivers camp in Socha Valley. And I don't know, it's quite a difficult one to really convince a community of, because living there already, right, Cahterine? People are convinced that they want to stop the hydropower. So in that sense, locally at least, it's happening. And I have the feeling that this camp might really bring the good atmosphere also for this kind of stuff, with people like that I just showed, and which is a step, right? Like it's not saving the world yet, but this part is definitely important. Sorry, that was a bit like I was also distracted by those guys coming into my phone.
Yeah, but I think also, and I think this is where Albi will have something interesting to say. Is I'm sure he'll want to. Oh fuck! I have 5% battery. But I just have endless conversations with people here where they're like, the state doesn't do anything, and I'm like, this is democracy. The state doesn't do shit. It's neoliberal democracy. They don't give a fuck. Like, you have to go push them. And that's the only good thing about democracy, is that you have the right to push the state. And that's why we need, I think Zamira is right. It's great that there are lawyers in this conversation, because oh, there's an echo now. Well, but we need to pinpoint. We don't just need to save the rivers. We need to fix the system where democracy functions, which means that we know the law, we know what's required, then we collect the data, then we prove it's not working, and then we prosecute in courts, and then law gets enforced and people are empowered. That's, you know, it's like, it's not all science. And we communicate, as Flaviano just said. So
yeah, I guess
I don't know how anybody else feels. I mean, we had this whole list of other stuff we could talk about tonight.
Well,
I'm kind of feeling like the most important thing is to feel like there's a core group of people that want to work on this. But what does anybody else think?
I maybe have something to, like, because now we've just made this from a relatively compact idea into, like, we have to save the world and we have to change the system. We should get back to doing something that we can actually achieve next year, I think. So, like, we don't have to get to it now, but that's probably the thing we have to work on the coming time, to make it tangible and to, like, go step by step and to have a cool step that we can achieve next year.
yeah.
We'll have to talk a bit more. Yeah, I don't know, that was just a remark there.
Yeah, I guess I just have one comment to make. A lot of times people think, Latinas, can we give me a second? A lot of times people think that like it's like, okay, now come the science, but there's a kind of a difference between monitoring and doing the actual scientific studies. And there's no reason that you need to get everything else in order before you start monitoring or collecting some consistent, simple data. Because those are two sort of different steps. And I think the act of actually just getting going, getting people who care about the river or live there, collecting simple, useful data without actually a clear way to, you know, a clear study, but that's usable for other people, is a really empowering thing to do, because it gets people going on the river, it gets momentum locally. But then you have, what was I going to say with that? I'm a little distracted. So, but anyway, yeah, I'd say I kind of encourage what I've been finding, because I've been kind of working with some of these groups, is a lot of times they'll like, oh, I want to do a monitoring, but they get stalled out because it just seems like there's too many options and too many things they do, and take a lot of time to like think they have to do a big program to get going. But you can do something so simple, like you have one person in a town or one person that's interested, they can start collecting some very simple data. And as long as we can have the back end of where that data is stored, I think that that's sort of the more sticking point, where you have a place to report these simple variables, and then it's easy for an individual to latch in, and that it can grow from there. So I don't know, that's just from my own sort of experience, both as a river person, like in the river community, as a kayaker, but then also as a scientist. And we don't need to think of the science as like a one big, huge, like blob of a thing that seems difficult to do.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
No, I think that's a really good point, because of everything that Jess did last summer, really the most powerful has been the river gauges. We're just going every couple of days and measuring the level of the water, which is incredibly important, right? Because probably there's a lot less water. Didn't snow at all last year.
With this.
Huh?
So you guys have been recording the water level.
Yeah, sometimes a lot, sometimes not so much. But I can see that it's the kind of thing that it's easy to do. Like Lee, is saying. But it makes you feel like in control of something. You go and you check it, and you're like, yeah, okay, it took me 30 seconds of it. And you get really excited. You're like, ooh, water's lower than it's ever been. Lower than it. Oh, it rained last night. Or why is the water higher today? Like, it's a cool thing. And I think it's nice for people to do. And it's super useful because Albie and Zamira can talk about, we have these water use permit. Like, how much water is the hydropower allowed to take out of the river? And it depends on how much water there is. And it turns out that the determination of how much water they're allowed to use is based on the hydropower company's calculation of how much water there is. Like, this is not verified from any external or national sources in Albania. When the hydropower does their application, their EIA, they say, oh, there's 9 cubic meters per second of water, and then the government says, okay, well, if there's that much water, you can use this much. But like, nobody knows if there's even that much water. So just going and checking the water level it's easy. You don't have to be a genius to do it, and it makes you feel in control.
Yeah,
it's useful data.
I just wanted to quickly finish off saying what I started with Natalie's point, and it's that I think it's good to take off these bite-sized pieces. So for example, this water level, I think the question of, and maybe Flaviano can speak more to this, but I think this question of citizen science monitoring, I don't know, to me, I think the bigger problem lies in, like, I think you need scientists to sort of take all of this data into something that's graphically interesting, or that you can argue with, or they can not just process data, but kind of, make connections and then arguments from this kind of data. But then I also think it's not encouraging for citizen scientists to just collect data from year on without seeing any results. So I kind of see this as the disconnect in this problem. Not we need to monitor more parameters and blah, 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 but even for simple parameters, how to get people to continuously collect them and see the value in it, and going every day, and then just writing down water level, for example, when they're not going to see the return on their investment for a year or 2 or 3 or 5.
I have a comment. Are you finished? Sorry.
Yeah.
Hi. So I think what made me really excited from the RightsCon conversation was when Cahterine was talking about like the community and like bringing people together, and what I keep hearing like from different disciplines, and taking like from the policy perspective back to like the community outreach and what's going on in Latin America with what Flaviano is doing with just cheap, getting the citizens to do this sort of science and gathering of the data using cheaper instruments. What made me excited was kind of, and what I'm listening now is that there's so many disciplines that are necessary to actually tackle on this problem. It's not just a science perspective, it's also getting the education perspective into the community to first hype them up in the sense of like, why does this matter? And that's why I studied water, right? From the economics perspective of like, in the United States, there are water permits. In Albania, that may not be to the extent of the sophistication of the United States water law, but in other countries of the world where we really take water seriously, not, to the extent of wherever the country is. I think water as a whole, if you're a water expert, you recognize that it's one whole body of water. And because there is a huge climate movement, and what began as far as Greta, like last year, I think that you have to also get into the intersection of movements that are relatable to water. So it's not like when we do something to the water, or when I guess a few ideas. Okay, clarifying. To step back, I think one, education in the community is absolutely vital. I think like getting excited, and that is why I'm excited about this river camp, because you're bringing experts together, but you're also I guess to some degree, you're saying, Vera, like, why wait until you have your doctorates or your graduate degree to begin on doing some of this really momentum research that can really help? Why not start now? And I think the point where you're saying we would like to get grants so that we can get people excited and doing this is really great. But like, I'm trying to see, like, how can you connect this conversation to other movements? Because I think that it is intersecting with both human rights, what's going on with indigenous rights, like environmental rights in general, right? But it has, I guess there should be a movement coming up. And what I'm sensing is like, we're really, the movement for the water movement really hasn't ever began. There hasn't really been, it's an environmental movement, but where is the water movement, right? Nobody really necessarily thinks of water if you come, unless you come from a place where you don't have that water sustainability. So I think that movement is something that needs to be created. I think that hype and that moment and the momentum of getting people excited to just do citizen science, the fact that you have these kayakers, you know, just right outside your van and they're excited, and, you know, people who love spending time in the environment. I just came back from hiking, you know, and like I tore my ACL over a year ago, so I hadn't actually done that. And getting back out there, you really see there's a lot of people that are very much nature enthusiasts, and they're there on the water. They always want to get to the water. So making that statement of like, hey, don't you love being outside? Don't you want to start this? Don't you want to continue to hang out outside? I think is really important. And I think that that's something you guys need to tackle on all the way leading up to the River Collective Camp. Because I think like if you get this sort of momentum, you get people excited and you get people like really like, hey, maybe there's a hashtag, or maybe also the science communication part. How do you, one problem really is like getting scientists and politicians to ever see like in the middle, right? Because conversation, not the same, the language. So I think English, like just in plain language, explaining what this is doing when we behave a certain way with our water, or explaining what this is doing if you take this sort of measurement, how can this be relatable to you in your daily life? Giving value to water, because we don't necessarily do that. That I think is something that's really important. There's a lot of thoughts there.
But you're basically going back to Flaviano's point about communication.
Yeah, I think Flaviano's getting...
Albi, he's been wanting to say something for quite a while, I think.
There were two hands up.
Yeah, thanks. Can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So, Cahterine, you've read my writings and stuff, and you've seen that I like to link activism with institutional approach. I never think activism is enough in solving these sort of issues. So I don't know, have you seen the feasibility study of the project, the initial feasibility study of the project? Has anyone seen it ever? Because for every major project, you know, there is a feasibility study, especially when it comes to dams, especially when it comes to like interferences in the environment.
Are you talking?
So I don't know.
Sorry? I'm sorry to interrupt you. Maybe it's called something else. Are you talking about an environmental impact assessment, like the thing?
Yes. Sorry. Yeah, we call it an Albanian feasibility study, but it's an environmental impact assessment.
Yeah. Yeah.
So has anyone ever seen it?
Yeah.
Because trust me, as far as I know, the ministry and every company, they play around with these environmental impact assessments, and they write whatever they want. Yeah. So that's why I think that it's not enough to go to the river and check the level of the river daily and stuff. It's important that we have professionals that do it in a professional way, keep notes, know the annual flow of the river and everything. Because I'm sure that the real annual flow of the river is completely different from what they have written in the environmental impact assessment. I'm 100%
yeah, but this is exactly
sure about that.
This is exactly why we're saying we need to collect our own data, because I'm sure it is different. But they said the environmental impact assessment, and I can tomorrow I'll send you. We actually had it analyzed by foreign experts, and it's appallingly bad. It's appallingly bad.
That's what we need to attack.
Yeah, but I marched into the head of the national, what do you call it? The environmental agency that ratifies these things.
Agency of Natural Resources.
The head said to me, he said to me, you know, these things, they're just opinions. Their opinion is it's good, yours is it's bad.
Well, I mean,
don't
forget there is
I don't read it.
Yeah.
I just approve them. You know,
But
and this is like the highest level Albanian authority.
Yeah, but he can decide that. It's a court of law that can decide that.
Yeah, exactly. But then you go to court, and then it gets like, you know, the first judge is scared of Ulai, and then the second one, and then you send it to appeals, which they know is going to take 5 years, and then Gen 2 objects to something, which gets referred to high court.
But in this case, actually, don't forget there is a complaint that was submitted to the energy community. But the problem is that the Gen 2 says that they were not even obligated to conduct an environmental impact assessment because.
True.
Remember that, Cahterine? Like and so they did it out of the goodwill and therefore not bound by any standards. And
so they were not obliged to do.
Yes,
an environmental impact
because of
assessment?
it being
Who said that?
Gender 2. But I don't want to bore like everybody else.
That is a legal requirement. You can't interfere in the environment without.
No, because they don't need technically under the law at the time that it was given, they didn't need a environmental permit. They just needed an environmental permission, which requires a lower level. It's bullshit. You're laughing. You're right. It's total utter bullshit. In a national park, where if anywhere was going to require a good environmental impact assessment, it should. But these are technicalities. But that's why what I'm saying is, like, I think if we come out of this conversation feeling like we have a group of people who feel like by working together we can really change something, I'll be really excited because I think we can. But we're not going to sort out all the details tonight. But I'm happy to be the conduit for talking about this through. Or we can. I'm really bad at technology because I hate it. That's why I live here. But you know, maybe there's an easier way for us all to talk. I don't know, but.
I would just like to.
Believe me, Albie, I spent 6 years reading fucking legal documents in Albanian that I don't even know how to read, and it's really bad. The situation is really bad.
The law is not that bad. Trust me, because I know the law.
The law is good. Nobody uses it.
It's the way they use it. That's what I'm saying. It's all.
Yeah. No, I know.
But
that's what I'm saying. That's why we need. Oh, Iris.
I've got a question, and also it might be an idea. I don't know if you did it or not. I think a good source for information would be the elderly people. If you want to get some data about the river and the river flow, try to interview all the older people and see if there's any difference in the flow of the river. You know, I don't know, maybe 50 years or 30 years ago. I don't know how many old people you still have in Valbona, but just to see if there's any change in the river flow. And from that, maybe you can calculate or
but we can't quantify it.
Yeah.
They'll just be like.
That doesn't work. That wouldn't work in a court of law. Like rivers change all the time. From the city, in the city where I come from, rivers change every year, even though there's no interference in the river. It can change. It needs to be a study. Like it can change because where I come from, for example, Cahterine knows. You know, Cahterine River Bohne in Shkodër. Bohne once used to pass through another city, but now it goes only through Shkodër, like 100 years ago. But it didn't change because of interference. It's just the river flow decided to change. It all depends also from the nature, but in a court of law, you can't use.
The scientists would tell you, like, that's what it's supposed to do. Leave it alone.
Yeah,
in the environmental impact assessment feasibility study for Valbona, they argued that the worst damage to nature in Valbona was happening from the river because it keeps moving. So when they put the river in a tube, nature will be much more secure.
Control it, yeah.
This is the level of idiotic argument.
That's why again we can't use other people. Yeah, at least in a court of law, you can't use them.
But I do think part of the point of community monitoring is that it's maybe not a high standard data, but it's like getting people involved and having enough data that will actually make a story, and that story can make a difference. And it's then maybe if the story is clear enough, like there will be a scientist coming in and doing the real data,
Yeah.
like if needed.
As long as that is backed up by expert scientists, by engineers and stuff, yes.
I'm quite keen to put Ellie in word as maybe to round off also, because she's got quite a cool idea to actually not only keep talking, but quite soon already do something in this direction.
Are you talking to me, Vera?
Sorry, I am.
No, I was talking to
Sorry
Ellie.
if I intervene here, like
Yeah.
the scientist speaking.
Ellie, a bit later.
I think, as I mentioned before, communication is very important, and the elder can be used for that. It's very powerful to listen to old people that say, "Oh, when I was young, this river was full of water, and now it's empty." But from a legal/scientific point of view, that's useless, because there's a, and this has been studied, and I'm not joking now, it's really been studied, and the past is always better than the present. It's a psychological aspect of human being. So people will always say that in the back in the time, it was better everywhere, even when it was not. So from that aspect, I don't think the use of elder is very useful, but it's very useful in the communication aspect, especially in societies where elder are very well listened, like I assume is the Albanian one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and actually, Flaviano, and there's we just had a guy here over the summer doing a really great study, not on the levels of the river, but on how was water use managed before. And because in Albania we have, and all people know, we have the old system, which in rural areas, which the Turks never reached, the communists never really reached, whatever, like people organized themselves because there was no authority and they had to come up with their own authority. And this is sometimes called kanun, but more comfortably called like customary law. And so there was a community decision about how resources were used, and it was pretty cool, actually. And then, but anyway, so I think talking to old people is useful to document how decision making has changed, which is really important. And that's where like you could do indigenous rights, because you could say there's customary law here, and if there was customary law, then that defines an indigenous population, and under all kinds of UN blah blah international standards, indigenous rights have to be recognized, right? So that would be another really, really, really interesting argument, which doesn't really have anything to do with data collection. Well, data of people's experience.
It's about indigenous rights. It's really complicated. Like,
yeah.
Anyway, we can look into it, but indigenous rights are completely something else.
Yeah, I know. And the definition of indigenous is really tricky.
Yeah, it's tricky. So I don't think. But also in terms of how we communicate this to the public, I don't know, because again, I'm new to this. I don't know you guys. I don't know.
Can we also like go on to like, I don't know. It's going ping pong between 2 people. I don't know. Is it? There's some things I wanted to talk about that were discussed 10 minutes ago, and I'm like, okay.
Just talk.
Yeah, just talk. I mean, but I think Vera was mentioning someone else saying something else before. So I'm not sure who's moderating. That's why I'm like waiting, and so just now I'm like.
Yeah, see, I would try to get Ellie in.
Sitting around here in the evening. Talk.
No, Ellie, go.
No, Liri, go ahead. Maybe I can take the rounding up afterwards. It's no rush. And about monitoring, I think we're having kind of open discussion, so it's not that clear. And Vera got distracted by Kyle first. So go ahead, Liri. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So I actually had 2 comments on 2 things. So first, I would like to say that there's about what Cahterine said with the local people assessing data, and what sorry, I have to check. Jessica, I think Jessica said about the quality of data, and that those data have to be like really scientifical to be used. There's this. I've worked for an outreach for Max Planck Institute for the outreach, and I've seen how you can actually collect data, but there's this middle line in between. Citizens do actually, it's very hard to make them collect good data, but you still have to show those little results that they take into consideration for them to motivate. So that's kind of the middle way of what both of you said. To one short comment on Vera and Cahterine, when Cahterine was very like motivated about like how to change the system, and yeah, and when you kind of a bit stopped her about this point, because we have to achieve realistic goals and we have to accomplish something, I think it is good to be realistic in some things, to keep that in mind, but we have to be open about those big changes that should be that we should try at least to achieve, because it's what I hear here is what a lot of big organizations, NGOs like WWF and so on, this is their way of doing it. They're like, yeah, let's do something small that people can see the results, and let's be part of the system. While well, maybe that's why we had connected, Cahterine and me, there, because we see that the system is broken, and we actually it's not working in the system. So why trying to fix it further and further and further? So we need to be open, and we need to have this discussion over and over again. And even on river camps or any gatherings of young people, we need to leave at least 1 or 2 tools to be like open in this direction, and not be like only what is achievable, because then this is not having a vision. Actually, a vision is something that you may never actually achieve, but you try. So yeah, thanks a lot.
Yeah, thank you, Liri. I totally agree with that. Maybe I can perfectly round that up now, because it's 9:15. I'm open to keep on discussing, but I don't know how everybody else feels about that. Just some very concrete thing that we can continue. I just realized that this year's online Students for Rivers camp might actually fit into this perfectly. Do you think it's realistic to get together? I mean, I think it's realistic, because it can happen anywhere, to get together a small group of people, like we have to do these days, small group, in the Valbona Valley, joining the program of the Students for Rivers camp. We are planning like the home river bioblitz also, where people go out together and just monitor what's out there on an ecological point of view. But I think this would be a place where these discussions, no matter how big they go or how detailed they stay, come alive, and then people just get going. And if it already starts this year, then I think this movement gets rolling and more people get involved and people tell each other about it. So I would say we actually invite everybody to join. And if you, because actually I think it's very important to get the locals into this discussion even more, because they know what should be monitored. They know which elderly people to talk about. They understand the system maybe better than we do. So yeah, Vera, do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I would like to. So yeah, I appreciate those comments. One thing that I remember Stephanie was talking about, motivating people. And what I have found is that there are these local groups already that are motivated. They just don't know what to do. And so from like a practical point of what shall we do, or what do you want to do? And this is where kind of I've been working, is it's very important, I think, when you're thinking about data validity and usefulness of data, and having something that you're not just collecting stuff, but you're collecting things that people can see, and then that's also useful on the law side of it. And that scientists could then also use to do some more detailed analyses. It's really important to have something set up. that it's easy for people to just plug into. And so, and I think that's where the back end effort comes in, and it seems like that's where it would be the most valuable to spend a bit of time this year from Jessica, or from, you know, as we're doing things, not just off the cuff one-offs, but you have a system, and that's an online data repository, some specific protocols, because data validity really comes down to how well do you have the metadata. Can someone look at what you did and know exactly what you did? Then a scientist that's looking at it and wants to do further analysis can make a call whether that's going to be useful for them. But you have to have that consistency and those protocols in place. Otherwise, it's all slapped, like someone does it some way on this river and another way here, and it's very hard to put together cohesive stories or to use that data for analysis. So, and I guess that's where most of my interest right now is coming from, and where I've been working, that it's that. And so I guess that's one reason why I joined this call. Specifically, I was really interested that Vera was saying, well, what can we collect, and what I'm really interested more in the question of specifics. What data is most useful from a legal standpoint for the sediment, for the hydropower to collect, because I'm designing these protocols for the Mariana. It's be really useful for me to know potentially other people in these calls, based on your own experience, like what in particular is the most persuasive type of information, whether it's how it's delivered. So is that a scientific article, or but also just like the actual data itself. So like if you're running sediment models, what is the most important part of that data that I could potentially convert into figuring out a system, a protocol for citizen scientists to do, so that the data can be quite robust and good and usable, and how you can still get high quality of data if it from them. So I guess that's where I'm sitting at. I'm going to stop because I talked long enough.
I'll just piggyback off of what Natalie said. So I'm happy.
Can I ask you, because I think we lost Cahterine and we're losing more people, and I think we should actually go towards round up. Though, like, yeah, no, go ahead, but
okay,
like try to.
Yeah. Okay. So, I just want to ask if Natalie was talking in her original comment before she made this comment. I think she just clarified, is the repository or data, when she says that, is creating a platform or creating some sort of system online where citizens sit for, like if it meets these specific qualities and you're doing it like this proper way with specifics, then you can just easily input. And you can be anywhere from the world, from Africa to Arizona, or in the Balkans to Guatemala, to collect this data. Is it that not like this doesn't exist? And is that something that Natalie is seeing as potentially necessary?
So, I know, like, Natalie's kind of back, yeah, but Natalie's working on that a lot indeed. She's making a repository, at least for the Mariana at the moment also, but that could be used anywhere in the world.
Yeah, so this sort of exists. So in the last 5 years, 6 years, these data platforms have gotten a lot better. I've noticed like the citizen science kind of realm has really boomed, especially in the other realms. And what's nice is that you have, it does increase the level of quality of data. There's one platform that I've been looking at a lot called ANIC data that we might be able to put up specific protocols. You can easily plot your data, or anyone can go on there and see it. I guess I am interested to know from like sort of the legal or accepted, like how that sort of data is being thought of right now, from more of the the legal or governmental side of things, because I know some scientists are starting to use a lot of that data and publish really interesting studies. So yeah, it exists. I am starting to work with the Mariana on putting some of their information up that hopefully can be scaled more general. currently, or be at least a template for other people to use. It's kind of slow going with me. Again, I have the 2 kids at home, so I'm doing what I can, but it's not in any sort of rush. So yeah, that's sort of.
I think somehow this could run quite parallel, which could be super cool. Hey guys, I'm really I'm gonna excuse myself because I ran into this valley today and I didn't even know this action was going on, and I had to get out of it and just be here. But I really want to.
Yeah,
go
no,
to the
and
valley
Leah said we've already been on the phone for over an hour. So what I would suggest is that as Elizabeth said, as part of the online Students for River Camp now, there's this Bio Blitz thing. So maybe we could communicate by email and come up with something that because just go out and examine your river is a great idea, but it's a little bit directionless. So maybe we could talk about either introducing local people to the river gauges or whatever they could do, or maybe just what I'm saying is let's follow up by email and go to bed.
Yeah, that would be great. I think that would work well. Oh, I think Cahterine is out again. But okay, let's do that, right? So does Cahterine have all your email addresses? I'm pretty sure she does. Maybe it's from the Stephanie? No, she has.
I'll be here is Jess, Zamira. Natalie, no, but
I'll get it to you. I'll get it to you.
You can get it to me. And Stephanie, I have your email, no? Okay,
No,
cool.
I'll send you an email.
Okay. Sweet. Okay.
From my side, at least, thanks a lot for everyone that was here. It was definitely a bit of a everywhere conversation, and we kind of expected it also because we just didn't know who was going to come, so what would be the most important parts to discuss. But I think we had a lot of aspects, and now it's going to be a game of getting this together, right?
Yep. I'm super excited. Thank you all for coming.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
Let's save the world. Why not?
Why not? And Lira, just a really quick note on that. I really do agree a lot on that. Like, I don't want to pretend like all those bigger problems are not there, and like I fully agree. But I also somehow want to do something. So it's like, yeah, cool. Save the world. Let's save the world.
Cool. Yay! Says the girl calling from her van. Okay. All right. Big hugs.
Ciao.
Bye, guys.
Everybody.
Bye bye.
Bye.
Thank you.